Hello. Today I'm going to share with you an exercise that is the exercise that I most commonly give out. It is for any kind of pelvic pain, and it's a really good exercise for if you've got pelvic pain. So it's not, it will help to prevent pelvic pain, but in those moments where you have a real flare-up, this exercise is a really wonderful one to do. The most common category of people that have pelvic or lower back pain is pregnant people. So we're going to talk a lot about pregnant people, but it's not the only category of people. Some people will have pelvic pain post-pregnancy, and then some people have pelvic pain for completely other different reasons. Really, really quickly, I'm going to go through the anatomy of pelvic pain. So there are 5 joints. Yes, no, 6 joints to the pelvis. There is this one at the front that connects this side to this side. There are your 2 hips that connect your pelvis down into your legs. There is one at the top here that connects your pelvis into your spine, and then 2 here that connect what we call the sacrum into the pelvic bones. Okay. The other thing that you have to know is that your pelvis is made up of 2 pelvic bones. It's probably the best layman's term, and then 1 sacrum bone in the middle here. The sacrum is the extension of your spine. It is the bone before your coccyx bone, which is right down the bottom here. It's roughly as big as your hand, and it sits right in the middle of those 2 pelvic bones there. So there's 2 joints either side of the sacrum that connect into the 2 pelvic bones. The other thing that is probably really good to know, and again, I don't want to go into it in a huge amount of depth because I want to do the exercise, but the other thing that's really, really good to know is that your nerves come all the way down your spine. At your sacrum, there's nerves that come out, and then they go down through your buttocks, down through your legs, and all the way down to your feet. So sometimes when we're getting lower limb pain, especially if it's nerve pain, sometimes that can also be a pelvis-related problem. So the exercise that we're going to do is called the pelvic clock. You can do, and probably the best way to do the pelvic clock is laying down because you have a little bit of weight and it's easier to sort of control. You don't have to do it laying down, especially if you're, 9 months pregnant with pelvic pain. Lying down on your back is not going to be comfortable. You can also do it against a wall. Now, I don't have a good wall behind me to show you, but you want to take your feet a little distance away from the wall. You want to lean back into the wall so that your whole back is against the wall. Everything else you would just do as per your normal pelvic clock exercise. So pelvic pain is usually in one of those joints, or like I said, can be coming down the leg. Yep. All right, so let's have a go. Come and find yourself a lying down position, or standing up against a wall is fine too. Bend your knees. When we straighten our knees out, you find that your lower back lifts up off the ground and we're putting some stress into the pelvis. So we bend the knees so we have a good contact with the lower back and the pelvis. When you bend your knees in this position, you don't want to take your knees or your legs too far out because, again, that's making your lower back work too hard, and it's also making your stomach muscles work too hard. At the same time, you don't want to take your heels too close into your bottom because now we're starting to tilt the pelvis this way and we're working too hard through the legs. So find a spot where the legs are a neutral distance away, where you can feel your whole back contacted to the ground and the pelvis is relatively soft and relaxed. Now I want you to think of the anatomy that we were talking about before, and I particularly want you to think of your sacrum. So that bone in between your two pelvic bones that is the extension of your spine. What we're going to do is we're going to start with some pelvic rocks. So we're going to get you to bring your coccyx bone down towards the ground. This is going to soften through your hip joints and it's going to arch your lower back up off the ground. Then we're going to push the sacrum into the ground, use a little bit of stomach muscles, lift your coccyx bone up off the ground and really push your lower back down. So we come coccyx bone down, lower back lifts off, and then lower back pushes down and coccyx bone lifts off. If this is the first time you've done this, you may just want to get used to this rocking backwards and forwards movement. If you've experimented with this a few times, I'd like you to think of your sacrum or the back of your pelvis like a rolling pin. And so you're really rolling or pushing your sacrum into the ground as you move from one position to the other position. Try to keep your legs steady. The idea is that your pelvis is moving around your legs. Your legs are not helping to move your pelvis and your knees are not swinging over to the side to get that pelvis movement. You want to try and keep the feet firm on the ground, the knees pointing up towards the ceiling, and it's really just isolating through the pelvis. Now we're going to name these positions. So when we bring the coccyx bone down onto the ground, we're going to call that 12 o'clock. When we take the lower back down onto the ground, we're going to call that 6 o'clock. So we're rocking gently from 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock. Think of pushing your sacrum into the ground. Notice if there's asymmetries from one side of the ground to the other. So I have had some pelvis problems in the past due to a lovely car accident. I find that my pelvis is uneven. So I feel even when I'm at 12 o'clock and I feel even when I'm at 6 o'clock. But in order to get there, I can feel my pelvis tilt slightly over to the left. It doesn't really matter what's happening through your pelvis. I just want you to be aware of this, to notice what's going on in your body. No matter what's happening, the answer to fix what's happening is this exercise. So we don't have to overanalyze it. I don't have to tell you that my pelvis tilts over to the left because my sacrum is slightly rotated. We just need to know, oh, really interesting. The left side of my pelvis feels clearer, harder on the ground than the right side. All right, let's come back into the center. Let's move on to the next step. If you found the last step really difficult, I would suggest that you switch off the video, keep practicing 6-12 or 12-6 until you get that really solidly, and then move on to this part of the video. So we've done 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock. Now we're going to go 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock. This one is usually easier in terms of physical movements, but more difficult in terms of coordination. So we're going to tip the pelvis over towards the right-hand side, and then we're going to tip the pelvis over towards the left-hand side. So again, if this is the first time you've done this, you may just want to practice tipping from one side over to the other side. If you're a little bit more advanced at this one, I'd like you to have a go at two things. The first one is focusing on the knees staying up towards the ceiling. The second one is that as you tip the pelvis over towards the right, you need to push your left foot into the ground. So we push the left foot to tip the pelvis over to the right, and then we push the right foot to tip the pelvis over to the left. That's where the coordination comes in. So for 3 and 9 o'clock, we are using the legs a little bit, but we're not using them in terms of moving the legs. We're just using some of the strength of the legs to refine that movement. The third and final thing with your 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock movement is that at the start, you'll just tip your pelvis from one side to another side. That's fine. Eventually, we go back to the anatomy of the pelvis. We want to try and land at the edge of the sacrum. So for some people, depending on the shape of your pelvis and depending on what's happened, had a birth, not had a birth, pregnant, not had babies, not being pregnant, all the different options, male pelvis versus female pelvis, you might find that you can feel the edge of your sacrum as a bump. So there's a little like mountain ridge that you can land on. You might find that you feel the edge of your sacrum like a dip, like a joint or a valley. Either of those is absolutely fine. But see, if you can feel the difference between here, I'm on sacrum. Here, I feel mine as a little valley. So valley. If I go here, my sacrum isn't on the ground at all. Yeah. So I'm trying to aim for valley over to valley. Beautiful. All right, so let's settle back in to the center. If you need to, feel free to bring your knees in towards your chest, or assuming you're not pregnant, because this is a little bit squashy if you're pregnant, or maybe if you're pregnant, you might just want to wiggle your knees from side to side. We're going to move on to the third stage of the pelvic clock now. So again, if 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock was difficult for you and you want to take some time to really master that, by all means go for it. Turn the video off. Take a few days of practicing 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock. Otherwise, you guessed it, we've got 6 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock. We're now going to go all the way around the clock, okay? I quite often get people just doing this. This is not the exercise, all right? What I want you to do is come to 12 o'clock. So that's tailbone comes down, lower back arches up. We're going to slightly swing over to the right, 1 o'clock. Bit further, 2 o'clock. You may feel your left foot pushing into the ground to help you tilt over. All the way over to the right, which is that 3 o'clock position. Start to tuck under a little bit, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. Fully tucked under, we know this one, 6 o'clock. Now we're starting to go over to the left, 7 o'clock. You might feel your right foot on the ground now. 8 o'clock, all the way over to the left, 9 o'clock. 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and back into 12 o'clock. So again, if this is your first time doing it, just count each number one at a time and just allow your body to practice, get used to the coordination of this. This is a difficult exercise. It's not a physically difficult exercise, but to be able to do this one correctly is quite difficult. requires quite a lot of coordination and quite a lot of concentration, but it's well worth learning to do. Some people think that just because we're moving the pelvis around in a circle that it's going to be easy and that we don't have to think too hard about it, but actually this is quite difficult. So as you go around, we want to try and keep the knees pointing up towards the ceiling. Keep as little movement through the leg bones as possible, but you're going to be finding that the muscles, particularly around the hips and into the legs, are going to be helping you to swing your pelvis around. We want to count each number as we go around. And as you go around, I want you to notice if there's numbers that are difficult or numbers that are missing or numbers that just feel a little flat. Again, I could do you a whole hour video analysing if this number isn't right, then you have a problem with the flexibility or the strength in this hip or this joint of the pelvis. But there's no point to that, okay? The point is to keep going around. If you feel that stiffness, just keep working through it. If something is not balanced within your pelvis or something is a little bit painful in your pelvis, this is the pose to fix it, okay? All right, come back into the center. I'm going to continue to talk about the pelvic clock, but we're going to reverse the pelvic clock. So rather than going 12, 1, 2, 3, we're going to go 12, 11, 10, 9, 8. So we're going anti-clockwise. Off we go 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 12. Beautiful. Keep going. So if you're missing or there's a number that's flat, that's absolutely fine. That's perfectly normal. When you go clockwise, you may find that a certain number, let's for example say 1, is missing or is flat or feels like you just kind of skip over 1, maybe 2. When you go anti-clockwise, it may still be 1 or 2 that feel a little bit flat, or it may be the opposite. So it may be 7 or 8. It might also completely jump anti-clockwise to clockwise. Again, there's a reason for all of these things. Don't worry about it. Just keep practicing the pelvic clock until you can quite comfortably get all the way around. As you get better and better at it, the aim is to find the edge of the sacrum. So rather than swinging the pelvis all the way around, which is not wrong and will be doing you some good, as you get better and better at it, the aim is to try and find the edge of the sacrum. So again, it's either a raised section or a kind of dip section. If there's a bit that's really sore, so let's again go back to 1 and 2. 1 and 2 are really painful for you. Usually that comes in the form of sharp, stabbing, shooting pain. We don't push through pain. So let's say we're at 12 o'clock. We're going around our circle, but 1 and 2 is really painful. We'd go anti-clockwise. We'd go 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. We don't want to go to 1 and 2, so we go back the other direction. 4, 5, 6. My counting was a little off then. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Then back anti-clockwise. So you'd go clockwise and anti-clockwise, just skipping those numbers that are sore. That would slowly start to loosen up all of the joints of your pelvis, start to realign your whole pelvis. And what you would find is that eventually you could go all the way around. All right, coming back into the center for me. Again, we'll just do a few movements just to release out any kind of tensions. So maybe that's moving the legs slightly from side to side. Maybe if you're not pregnant, it's just rocking your lower back down onto the ground. And then when you're ready, we'll pop the soles of the feet down onto the ground. We'll roll all the way over onto the side, and then we'll come all the way up to sitting. So well done, and thank you for practicing with me. Two very quick last things. No pain. Don't work through pain. If it doesn't feel right or uncomfortable, go with your intuition. I would probably go and talk to somebody or send me a message. There might be something a little bit bigger than just a little bit of malalignment going on. And then the last thing I want to just quickly tell you is that I've been teaching this exercise. It's not strictly a yoga exercise. I've borrowed it from another, I don't know what that category is, yoga, Pilates, body work. It's not a manual therapy, but it's something else. I borrowed it from another therapy other than yoga, but I've been teaching it for quite some time now. It's very, very rare that I get somebody who can get all the way around the first time perfectly without missing any numbers. So my experience tells me that living in the West and working a lot at computers or just having a bit of a sedentary lifestyle where our hips are kind of passive, most pelvises are slightly uneven, okay? I have never, ever come across a pregnant person who has gotten all the way around without any problems, okay? So just because you're missing numbers doesn't mean you're failing, or doesn't mean that there's necessarily something wrong with your body. This exercise is a chance for improvement, okay? We're just trying to balance the pelvis to potentially prevent pain. If you have pain, to improve that pain. There's nothing wrong with you because there's a number that's flat, okay? All right, I hope this video was helpful for you. Thank you very much. Namaste.